الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah ta'ala, tonight briefly we'll talk about some of the ahkam, the rulings of az-zakah. And the rulings of the zakah, of course, it's not sufficient to give it just one lecture, but we'll talk mainly about the things that is related to most of the people in our environment, which is basically the zakah of money, gold, silver, and some of the contemporary issues like stocks and haram money, halal money, things of that nature. And subhanAllah, whenever we study something in the deen, whether it's aqidah, whether it's ahkam of ibadat, legislations, rulings, really a person would see how miraculous it is, because there's no like of this anywhere on the face of earth. If you look into the ahkam of az-zakah with the nusus, with the text, wahi from Allah, Quran only, if you look at the ayat of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, it's miraculous in itself. Covers everything. That's why ulama would have books and books describing and explaining these great and rich meanings in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. If we just try to cover only the nusus, takes days and days. So about studying the ahkam and the fiqh of the zakah, this has its own context. When we're studying, we did some, and we also inshallah ta'ala will do that again in the books of fiqh, studying all the different masail with the principles of it to understand where things are coming from, to make things easy for a person to learn. But here inshallah ta'ala we'll just talk briefly again about some of the ahkam. The word zakah, and it's going to be like points. So if you really want to benefit inshallah, it's best that you take notes, because there's going to be many points that we will mention inshallah ta'ala. So it's all points to be mentioned for us to remember them inshallah ta'ala. But first, the word zakah, as we know, which is one of the pillars of Islam, this word zakah linguistically comes from purification. So it's related to the money. That means this is the act of purifying one's wealth. And anyone of decency, he would like to purify any filth. So the zakah, it's by the mercy of Allah that He made it an obligation, and the person has no rights to the portion of his wealth that's supposed to be zakah, because that belongs to someone else. And if a person does not give the zakah, there's a severe warning for such an individual. And there are details in this. Of course, as we know, it's one of the pillars of Islam. And it's an act of worship, of course, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to observe when it comes to our wealth. The ibadat are so many, whether it's done by the heart, the speech, actions in one's wealth. And it's all test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the believers, for them to go against their own desires to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it's all in their capacity. If the subject of the virtues of the zakah and the rewards are so many ayat and hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and we can do that inshallah ta'ala in another setting inshallah. The same thing when it comes to the warnings against those who would withhold their money and do not give the small tiny portion of our money that is saved, as we will talk about some of the principles here. A severe warning for such individuals. And as we know that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he fought those who withheld their zakah. And people, when they do not give the zakah, either they don't give the zakah because they disbelieve in it, or they think that this is not part of the deen, this is an act of kufr, of course. If someone doesn't do it out of greed, this is fusuq, this is major sin, can lead the person to what is evil for him. And the punishment of such an individual in the hereafter, the hadith also mentions severe punishment before even the hellfire. in the day of judgment, as one of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, ما من صاحب ذهب ولا فضة. There is no one that has gold or silver. لا يؤدي منها حقها. He does not give the rights of it, which is الحق. حق المال الزكاة. This is the حق. This is the right upon the wealth is the zakah. إلا إذا كان يوم القيامة, when the day of القيامة comes, صفحت له صفائح من نار. Plates of fire will be made for him. فأحمي عليها في نار جهنم. It will be heated, these plates from his wealth will be heated in the hellfire. فيكوى بها جنبه وجبينه وظهره. And with these plates, the side and the back and the forehead of that person will be these plates put on him to burn him. كلما بردت أعيدت له. Every time it cools off, it will be repeated, the process will be repeated again. And something that is to be heated in the hellfire, it's not like the worldly fire. And how long is this going to be? في يوم كان مقداره 50,000 سنة. In a day that its length is 50,000 years. This is before people going to the Jannah or the hellfire. حتى يقضى بين العباد. Till, this is something, this is the punishment, till the judgment, till people are judged. This is before the hisab, this is before the judgment. This is the punishment, some of the punishment of those who would not give the zakah. فيرى, then after the judgment, فيرى سبيله أو فيرى سبيله. Then he will see then his path, his place. إما إلى الجنة وإما إلى النار. Either he'll go to the Jannah or to the hellfire. This punishment might be means of purification. He did not purify his wealth willingly in this life, so the purification process has to be established. And the repentance from the zakah is, and this is another issue, if someone did not give their zakah, and this is one of the points to be mentioned, it does not get cancelled out. So if someone 50 years ago, 1 year, that he didn't give zakah when he was supposed to give zakah, it doesn't get cancelled out. The repentance from it, it is not sufficient to say, oh Allah forgive me, and he regrets it, never is going to do it again, and have determination not to do it. There's still another condition. He has to give that zakah. He forgot. He has to estimate whatever he can do, because now there's some poor people that get deprived from their rights. This is not something that is extreme on the person. This is stealing, this is looting, this is evil actions, because this is the right of the poor. So to make sure that inshallah ta'ala the matter is serious, and the zakah is upon the money, not upon the individual necessarily. I will talk about that. So some of the points inshallah ta'ala after this, when it comes to the person giving the zakah, there are certain conditions that has to be fulfilled, and there are conditions that has to be fulfilled with regards to the wealth. The individual, as you would see, it's not much, meaning that of course he has to be a Muslim, he has to be a free person, not a slave. So slaves, they don't have to give zakah, and that's it. What does that mean? A child, does the child has to give zakah? Not the child that has to give the zakah. The child is not responsible for his actions. But this child, if he has money, there's zakah on his money. The zakah is an obligation upon his wealth. So the one that is the guardian over the child, it's an obligation upon him to give the zakah from the child's money. The zakah, and this is a principle that we want to remember, the zakah is on the money, not on the individual. So at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when there was a zakah collected, the one that goes and he's hired by the authorities to go collect the zakah, he does not go for the individuals, he goes for the wealth. So the wealth is taken from it, this small portion, 2.5% of something that is saved when it comes to the gold and the silver, which is insignificant anyway, for a whole year, which is had the nisab over an entire year. So whether it's a child, whether it's an insane person, someone majnoon, someone insane, he's not responsible for his actions. There's no salah on him, there's no fasting, nothing. He's not going to be punished because he's not giving the zakah. He's not responsible for his actions, but he has money. He's a rich, insane person, right? Then the money that he has, there is zakah obligatory upon this money that has to go to the poor portion of the zakah. And of course, those who will be in charge, they would make sure that they would give it. So that's why you would not find like the other ibadat, the conditions for every ibadah. What is shurut al-salah, al-islam, al-bulugh, right? This is shurut al-wujub. A person has to reach the age of puberty and so on. But for zakah, it's about the money. So only to be a Muslim and a free person, that's it. Upon men and women at all times, all ages, and so on. So therefore, when we talk about the zakah, we're talking about the wealth. So there are specific types of wealth where the zakah is obligatory. This is the pillar of Islam, so it's not the general charity. And there's very strict rulings when it comes to the zakah and who also deserve to be given the zakah to and so on. As far as the wealth that is obligatory to give zakah from, and we won't discuss all of it, inshallah, it's basically the gold and silver and comes in the same category, money, in our nowadays concept of what's money is, cash money, money. And of course there is the treasures or the things that is under the earth, and there is the urud al-tijara, which is commodities that are ready to be sold, and there is az-zuru' wal-thimar, plants and some of the produce, not everything, specific matters, and al-an'am, the cattle. So inshallah ta'ala, for the most part, we'll focus on the gold, silver, and the money with different things there. So this point is, not everything has zakah, only specific type of wealth. One of the conditions that applies on the wealth, that the person has to have full ownership of it. And there are some rulings that comes as a result of this. So the zakah is going to come from his wealth. He has to have full ownership. If he's not having access to his wealth, there's no zakah on it. And that's why, for example, the subject of a dain or debt, which is something that will be mentioned, inshallah, but keep this in mind. Just remember the principle. Don't think of the practicality of it yet. And if you have any questions at the end, inshallah. So one of the conditions that has to be there is al-milk at-tam. That means perfect, complete ownership. That a person owns something and he has access to it. This is his money, he has access to it, and so on. Therefore, as an example, and mention this, if someone has money but it's lost and he's not able to find it, there's no zakah on it. And if he finds it, then he gives the zakah with some details. And there's many different stolen money, things like this. So he has to have ownership of it, full ownership. The wealth, I feel that I want to talk about this subject before we go to the next one. Briefly, inshallah, again. So it's, if the money, the person does not have full ownership to it, whether he lost it, whether the government took it, or he gave it to someone as a loan, and that person is denying it, or he's not paying it back, or he has some problems that he's not able to give it back, all of these types of things. So in that case, if the money he has no full ownership of it, if he receives it, if he gets it, right, then he would give the zakah only for 1 year. He lost hope, or he does not have any means to get his money. So once he gets ownership of it, full ownership, he has access to it, then he gives the zakah for 1 year. So if you give someone loan, and that person is not paying it back, whether he's mu'sir, that means he's not able to, he doesn't have the means, or he's denying it, or he's just being evil, whatever. So you don't have any access to your money. So you don't count this as part of your money that you give zakah on. And if he gives it to you, if it happened that he gave it to you after 10 years or whatever, you give zakah only for 1 year when you receive it. So this is in general the ruling of the money that a person does not have any means to it. It's his money, but he lost it or whatever. So he gives just 1 time zakah when he receives it, if he receives it. That brings the subject of al-mal al-haram. If the money is haram, the person, whether the money itself is haram, he stole money, for example, he has to return it back, or it's earned in haram way, or riba or the like of this. So the subject of al-mal al-haram, something that needs to be studied. We have to know what's haram and what's halal when it comes to the wealth. Al-mal al-haram, there's no zakah in it. This is not a break for those who have haram money. This is actually a punishment for them because they're supposed to get rid of it. And it's not permissible for them to keep it. So this is when it comes, this is a rule, that no exception to it whatsoever. Any money that is haram, interest, right, which is riba. Is there zakah on the interest? No zakah on the interest. This interest is supposed to be, person has to get rid of it. Any money that is earned from a job that is haram, right? If his job is mixed, the money is mixed, some haram and some halal, then he has to estimate how much is halal. It's not to approve the haram, he has to repent to Allah and get rid of the job. But if he has a portion of his earnings from haram, this portion is not to be added to the zakah. Inna Allah tayyib la yaqbalu illa tayyiba. Allah is tayyib, pure, he only accepts what is pure. So al-mal al-haram, there is no zakah from it whatsoever. Part of the milk tam, or the full ownership, is zakatul dayn, which is always an issue that people talk about, zakatul dayn. Ad-dayn, or the debt, has two sides to it. There is ad-da'in and al-madin. Ad-da'in is the one that gives the loan, and al-madin is the one that receives the loan. So is there a zakah on the money that is being given as debt? If you're someone that gave someone money as loan, that individual is one of two types. Either you know that he's going to give it back, or at least you assume that he has the means to give it back, then you pay zakah on it. And make this as a clear principle, as zakah here is for the one that owns the money. And the one that takes the debt, he owns it while he has it, right? But it's mal mu'allaq, it's kind of a hanging there. He does not have actually, in the sense, full ownership, because he's supposed to return it back, right? Who's the owner of the money that has been given in debt? Is the one that gave the money. And that's why giving someone or debt in Islam is a good deed. It's not a business transaction. So there's depreciation, all of that. Yeah, you're given half of that money that you're given is for charity. You get the rewards of it as if you gave it in charity. If you want to do business, there are the other ways to do business. But debt in Islam, this is a good deed. You're helping someone, even if the person has enough money. When you give someone a loan, it doesn't have to be that the person is starving. It can be he takes the loan to make business or to do trade with it. That's fine if you choose that way. So if he is mali, as they call him, he's mali, full, that means he has the means to return it back. That means you the one that, the ad-da'in is the one that has the zakah upon him. But the other side, the madin, the one that took the debt, does he have to pay zakah? If he's given it back, no, he can just give it back. But it's one of the things where it's sometimes tricky, because he has his money and he has lots of money, for example. So at the end of the year, he's going to give the zakah from his money. The issue of subtracting the debt, if he's going to give it, not that he has debt so he subtracted and he still have the money, no. If he's going to keep it, then he has to pay zakah too. Even though in principle the zakah is not to be done twice for both sides. But this is a case where the ulama, they say, because the one that receives the money from a loan, either he doesn't have the means to return it, so there's no zakah on him, or he has the means. So if he has the means, what he's supposed to do? To pay back the loan, not to keep it with him. He just took it temporarily, so why he's keeping it? So as a way of, well, you're keeping it, then pay zakah. Like this. So because it's the money of someone else. Even if the time of it is not there yet, but you don't need it anymore. It's not used, so return it back. So this is with zakatul dayn. If the person lose hope, as we said, the person is not paying it back, there's doubt in this, then you don't calculate it from your money of your zakah. If he receives it, you give it only for 1 year. And if you hear many things, because there's some opinions here, and they're both strong opinions, whether once you receive it, you pay the zakah right away for 1 year, or once you receive it, you wait for the next Hijri year, and then you pay on it if it's still present. One of the conditions for the wealth, that al-hawl, or a whole Hijri year from the lunar calendar, has to pass on the naqdain, which is the gold and silver and the money. So it has to pass the whole year, the whole Hijri year. And this is also with the commodities that are ready to be sold. I think I'm going to lose charge, so I'm going to use the phone. Is it clear? Oh no, it's not charging. It's okay. Oh, I think it's. Oh, this one. Oh, it fell. جزاك الله خير. طيب تمام. So the hawl, or the passing of the year, whether it's gold, silver, whether it's money, whether it's commodities that are ready to be sold. So, and it's based on the Hijri calendar. Some people, they calculated if you want to make it based on the other calendar, the Gregorian one, which you shouldn't, of course. It's not permissible. It has to be with the Hijri calendar. It should stay that way, so that many things, and the deen is based on the lunar calendar, Ramadan and Dhul Hijjah and things like this. So to get the easy way out, because there's a formula you can do, because every lunar calendar is 10, 11 days less, right? So instead of 2.5, it becomes 2.577, something like this, if you do it on the other calendar, the Gregorian one. But a person should not do this. Rather, keep it with the Hijri calendar. And when does it start? Once the person's money reaches the nisab. We didn't talk about the nisab yet. So it has to pass a whole year, a whole Hijri year, before a person can give the zakah. And the entire year, it did not go below the nisab. And the nisab is basically a very specific measure or amount of wealth that a person has to have without decreasing any of this minimum. This is the minimum requirement throughout the entire Hijri year. If it goes below the nisab, there's no zakah for that person. So, and it's very easy to understand that. So if someone, say the nisab, and the nisab of a dhahab is 85 grams, there's a way to understand where does that come from. In the hadith, 20 mithqalan, the mithqal is 4.25 grams nowadays. So it becomes like 85, and it's measured by the very the barley seeds. So it's very specific and very precise. So when someone says there's no grams at that time. So nowadays it's translated to 85 grams, gold. And for the silver, 590 grams of silver. And if a person's, and as you see, there's major difference between both. If you check the price of gold versus silver, there's major difference, of course. So 85 grams of gold nowadays, and I'm not saying, I'm not being accurate here, say for example it's $7,000, for example. So whoever has $7,000 saved for an entire year or more, then he gives the zakah, and we'll talk about how much a person would give. But this is al-hawl, and this is the nisab. If he has $7,000, or the nisab was $7,000 in the beginning of Ramadan, then now there's the red flag. This is now you start counting, right? And then Shawwal, Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, it was increasing 8,000, 9,000. And then in Dhul Hijjah, it went down to 2,000. Then you stop the calculation, with the calculation of the year. Why? Because he went below the nisab. If he comes back again up, okay, now this is a date that needs to be remembered, right? Is it going to pass a whole year without going below the nisab? So the threshold of the nisab is this line where for the person to give zakah, the money cannot go below this the entire Hijri year. If it goes higher, mashallah, is good, then he's going to pay zakah. But it does not come or go down below the nisab, which is 85 grams of gold, 590 grams of silver. And in some situations where, and it's very stressed, to when it comes to the money, to the cash money, to be based on the silver. You would hear all the time that you have the choice. And they say it's best to do it based on the fidda, on the silver, because that means more poor people will get money that way. And this is only for those who their money is between $800 to $7,000. Someone has, his money never goes below 10,000, he doesn't have to worry about this. but someone's money is fluctuating between 800, I think the silver maybe 500, 600, something very small, versus $7,000, that means give zakah. Because some said it's obligatory to be upon the silver because the money, it's really, is it based on the silver or based on the gold? So to be on the safe side, make it based on the silver, which is the amount, which is something like $800. For example, you check that, the prices are very precise and it changes every day. So if someone say the nisab of the fidda equals to $800, so if you have always minimum $800 throughout the year, then you have to give zakah, right? So there is murur al-hawl, the entire year has to pass, and has to pass based on with the nisab being there. There is the fact that people would have money in and out, and this is where, if you want to look at it in the books of fiqh or so, they call it al-mal al-mustafad. Mal al-mustafad is money that get earned throughout the year. It's easy when someone gets, just a big portion of money at one day and then nothing for the entire year. That's easy. But money keeps on coming in, going out, things like this. So every time money comes in over the nisab, if a person wants to be precise, he can pay for this money only after a whole year passes on that money only. But it becomes very difficult, especially when someone has salary or things like this. Then it's just one day, once the nisab reaches, say it reaches in the first of Ramadan, then the next Ramadan you just pay whatever you have, divide that by 40, get the 2.5%. You're paying more and you're on the safe side, unless you want to check every increase. MashaAllah, this is good if you're able to do so. Sometimes it's needed if a big sum of money came into one's account 1 month or 2 months before the zakah, right? So he sold something and now he has money in his account, and the zakah is to be paid after 2 months. Does he have to pay zakah on this money? No, because there's no hawl, no year passed on this money. So he can wait for that money, but from when it get into his account for a hijri year, and he has to be watchful so that it's haram to give it late. But the norm is what many people would do is just one day. They don't have to worry about the zakah a day before or a day after, and they give whatever from the money that they have. If it's the entire year did not go below the nisab, then they give 2.5%. So the nisab of the gold is 85, and the nisab of the fidda, the silver, is precisely 595 grams of silver. And there is nisab for all the different types and the animals and so on. The issue of the gold, since we said the gold and the silver, anything that is gold and silver, if a person has gold or silver, then if it's the nisab is there, then he has to give zakah. But the gold and silver and the money and the commodities for tijara, which is maybe can be dealt with separately, but it's all to be combined together. So if someone has at home 50 grams of gold, right? There's no zakah for the 50 grams. But then he has money, $5,000, right? And silver, this and that. The sum of all of these things takes the person above the nisab. So that means he has to give zakah. It's not to be separately treated, because it's all in the same category. Gold, silver, money is in the same category. If you add them together. But then the issue of al-hulay, or the gold that a woman would use for wearing, is there a zakah on it or not? Yes, there's differences of opinions. If it's only used, she has it because she wears it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, and it's a valid differences of opinion, is to give zakah from the hulay if it reaches the nisab. And there's a hadith on both sides, but the hadith is warnings when it comes to the issue of the gold in general. Plus, you add to this it's very difficult to really be precise on one's intentions. I'm not sure. Back home, this is, for example, women, they get gold to wear it, but also to have something for the future, money saved, right? So that means it's not only for wearing it. But only for the gold, whether it's white gold or not the normal gold, it's gold. But anything else other than gold, it's not zakah eligible. So diamonds and so on, even it's more expensive, but there's no zakah on it. Unless a person is in the business of buying and selling it, or purchasing it to sell it. That comes into the category of urud al-tijara, or the commodities that are ready to be or prepared to be sold. So here we're talking about gold and silver, and comes in the same ruling, the wealth, or the cash money, or the money that a person has. So any gold and silver, whether it's utensils, whether it's plates, haram, halal, it doesn't matter. It has to be, if someone, the gold of, if a man is wearing gold, for example, right? It's haram for him to wear gold, but there is zakah on it. This is different than the mal haram. It's haram for a man to wear gold, but if he has gold, he has to give the zakah from the gold. So this is difference between that and the money. So we talked about the nisab of both briefly. And there's a formula also, because the nisab is based on the pure gold. So, which is the 24 carats. And most of the people, they don't have this. So there's a formula also that it's easy to calculate with regards to how much carats of gold. I have it with me here. It's easy to find out and search it in the internet. You find it easy, which is basically you put the weight of the gold, You multiply that by how many carats are they? Say, for example, 18 carats. So the weight times the type of the carats of it, you multiply that by the price of the gram of gold on the day that you're given the zakah, and you multiply that by 2.5%, and you divide the whole thing by 24. It will give you how much you're supposed to give. So again, the weight of the gold times how many carats of gold times the price of it at the time that you're given the zakah times 2.5%, and all of that is divided by 24. So you can try it and see if it works, inshallah. When it comes to the money, it gets the same ruling, and again, it's to make it based on the lower of the two athman here, which is the dhahab al-fidda, to make it based on the fidda, to make it based on the silver. And this is where Hayat Kibar al-Ulama in Saudi Arabia and Mujamma al-Fiqhi, they made that decision to be based on the silver, because this is also more benefiting for the poor. When it comes to the urud al-tijara, there's a zakah on urud al-tijara. Urud al-tijara, urud is the plural of ard, which is something physical, something that is commodity, something that is ready to be sold, products that are ready to be sold. Someone has business in buying and selling. So the same thing applies when it comes to the nisab. It's the same nisab of the gold and silver. So base it on the gold, the nisab of the silver. If someone opens a business of selling things, and all of the things that he sells car parts, for example. The value of it is $800 or more. And throughout the entire year, it does not go below that. He does not sell everything and then purchase something new. He always have some minimum inventory there. So that means he has to pay zakah. For urud al-tijara, make sure that you note this, because this is different than the wealth. If a year passes, the same thing, Hijri calendar, from the day that he reached the nisab, which is the same nisab of the gold and the silver, and a year passes, did not go below the nisab at all times, at the end of the year, he pays and he gives the zakah on whatever he has on that day at the end of the year. Not like the zakah of the money, you calculate how much or when did it, a year passes. No. So someone in the business of selling, again, car parts, and he's been maintaining the value of the inventory, for example, $10,000. And then right a month before the time of the zakah, he received, a shipment, and now he has what's equal to 100,000. And the day of the zakah comes, and his inventory, it's $100,000 worth of inventory. They just received it. He has to give zakah on the 100,000 of whatever he has of the inventory. So that's why they call it zakat urud al-tijara. The zakah applies on whatever is present from these items that are ready to be sold. Clear? So this is also difference between one's wealth. And this is with urud at-tijara. And again, something to remember how to make it clear. Picture that person that is coming to the businesses to get their zakah. He comes and he sees what's there, right? So based on what's there on the day of the zakah, he's going to collect 2.5%. He does not ask, oh, did this come yesterday, last month? It doesn't matter. Whatever is there, the zakah will be upon whatever is present. And that's why when it says urud al-tijara, that means it's ready to be sold. If it's something that is not ready to be sold, then there's no zakah on it. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, لَيْسَ عَلْ مُسْلِمِ فِي عَبْدِ وَلَا فَرَسِي صَدَقَةً. Someone has abd, someone has a horse, car, all kinds of things. There's no zakah on this. You have multiple homes, that's fine. Unless you're not having it for the purpose of selling, buying and selling homes. You have multiple cars, you don't pay zakah on them. Unless you're in the business of buying and selling. And once you start, you buy something with the intention of selling it, and you have it for sale, and a year passes, that means you have to pay zakah on it. If you sold it and you got money, then it becomes part of your money. A year passes on it, and to give zakah on it and things like this. And that's why the urud al-tijara is not tricky or anything, but we have to be watchful because there's no tricks are allowed. So if someone purchased a piece of land or a house, is he purchasing to own it or to sell it? If he purchases it to own it, for him, even in the future, he's not going to build on it yet, then there's no zakah on it. But if he purchases it to sell it, then there's no zakah, there's a zakah on it every year. And if he purchases it to sell it, and then he changed his mind, he wants it for himself, then no zakah on it once he changes his mind. So this is also something that refers to one's intentions. Someone might ask that, when you have zakah for the tijara and something that is already money that is zakah eligible. Someone in the business of selling gold. There's zakah for gold and there's zakah for tijara. Which one is to be used? Zakatul tijara, the trade. Someone has cattle, sheep and goats and everything, and the numbers of it is eligible for zakah. But he's having it to, not for farming and to keep him, he's having him to sell them. So which rule of zakah applies on him? At-tijara, which is 2.5%, because he's having them to buy and sell. So zakatul tijara takes over the other different types of money that is eligible for zakah. There are details for the tijara. If someone is in the business of things, he should ask, because of course the items that are ready to be sold, you have money that you're supposed to get from someone, you give someone money, all kinds of things. It's on the way, a person didn't receive it yet, things like this. So there's some details to it, and actually it goes into the details of if someone manufacturing something. If someone has a factory, so he gets raw material. The raw material has zakah on it. If he has the business and the year passes, then he has to go through what's in his inventory. It's not been manufactured yet, but it's raw material, there's zakah on it. And if something that is already in the some stage of manufacturing, there's zakah on it if it stays. So because the product is not only the final one, the stages of it also is to be part of what the zakah, and it's all to be evaluated, of course. So there's details in this, and maybe this can be discussed individually if someone has, but it's all something that is mentioned. The issue is the next one, the same thing with al-hulay. If the gold that is for wearing for women, as we said, for those who say that it's no zakah on it, but if it's for sale, it's been for buying and selling, then definitely, no doubt, no difference of opinions that zakah applies here. The issue of the stocks, al-ashum, and the stocks is of two types. Of course, there's many types, but I'm saying is when it comes to the zakah, either a person purchase shares or stocks from a company for the purpose of keeping them and he benefits from the profits with the dividends that comes. I'm not talking about the hukm of al-aswam. This is something separate. We're talking about zakah. Assuming that everything is halal, which is very rare to happen. So if this is the case and he only benefits from the profits, so there's no zakah on the stock itself. The zakah is on the profit. And whenever the profit he comes, he receives it. If he spend it all, then there's no zakah. It becomes part of his money. After the year, if he has enough money, then he gives zakah. But if he's purchasing stocks with the intention of buying and selling them, and he's keep on buying and selling them like this, then the zakah of it, if there's a zakah on it based on zakatul tijara. The zakah of urud al-tijara, 2.5% of the value of it every year passes. He purchased it. At first it was, of course, has to be reached the zakah, nisab. It was for $7,000. A year passes, did not go less than that. At the end, it's worth now the same stocks, it's worth 100,000. He has to give zakah on the 100,000, not to see the fluctuation, because it's urud al-tijara again. It's the zakah of tijara or things that are ready to be sold. So it's based on the end of the year, how much is the value of these things. Of course, when we talk about the stocks, the reality of the stocks, because the ruling of it originally, it's permissible if someone buys a share from a company with the condition that the company work is halal and it does not indulge in any haram transactions. Two things. People think that it's only the business aspect of the company is halal. That's not sufficient. And that's why you find this fund and that fund, Islamic fund, right, excluding the alcohol and the banks and riba and stuff like this. And the company's business is halal, right? That's not sufficient. It has to be, yes, halal, not dealing with anything haram, but also its transactions are halal. So if that company issue bonds, then it's haram to buy its stocks. Issue bonds, take loans, right? Has riba dealings, and its business is halal. But it's haram for you to purchase stocks from this company. Why? Because you're a shareholder. You're a partner in it. And when you're a partner, you're responsible for everything that happens, if you know, of course. That's different than someone would say, but I'm working for this company. And his work is halal and the company's business is halal. Yes, you're hired to work. That's completely different. You're ajir. You're someone that is hired to do a job. Your job is halal and the business itself is halal. Different than once they say, we want you to be a partner with us. Now you have to check everything. If they have anything haram, then either they eliminate it or you cannot be a partner with them. So that's what the issue of the stock. Forgive me. So, and then that's why the stocks is part of the urud al-tijara, because it's for buying and selling, and the other things that goes into manufacturing and the like of this. If someone has I don't know if we should go more and more with matters of business, because not everything, again, it's only the items that are ready to be sold. So the building is not zakah, the capital is not to be given zakah unless it's cash money. All kinds of things there is not to be applied for the zakah. For the urud al-tijara, is it based on, now a person wants to give the zakah, is it based on the price of the wholesale or the price of the item in the market, or what is it exactly? This is a debatable issue, but it comes down to the value of the things that he has. So if he knows, and this is his expertise, he knows that these items, it's worth this much. Because if a person is selling something, he wants the highest price. So it's not by the price that he wants from it. And some said either the wholesale, because it's easy, if a person wants to sell it, he would sell it right away. Or if he's able to figure out the value of it, then this is what's more accurate. And the value of it, that means it has this value. If you put that number on it, it would be sold today. not that he puts a number, a price, hoping for it to be sold later. So evaluating all of what he has after the year, and he gives the zakah based on this. The zakah is to be given money and not the items itself. So it's not to take from the items to give it zakah, but to give how much is these items are worth. If he evaluate the inventory that he has and it's equal to $100,000, for example, then the zakah is $2,500. He gives it as money, not from the items that are ready to be sold. The the issue is if people have partnership in this, if the zakah is being given, then not everyone, each one has to give zakah, right? Unless he takes money, then it's his own personal zakah. Also, one of the things here is the طيب. We talked about the stocks. No. Then after that, I would want to mention some of the things with regards to the individual, just certain specific points, inshallah. The niyyah while giving the zakah is important. So if someone gives money, he has to have the intention that this is zakah money. If he gives money and then at the end of the year he says, I gave money and it was for someone that is eligible for zakah, can I consider that from the zakah? No. If you did not have the intention that you're giving this as zakah. That's why it's permissible to give the zakah before its time. So your zakah is in the beginning of Sha'ban, but you give it in Muharram. A situation arises and you give zakah, sure, no problem. And then your zakah was to be counted in the first of Sha'ban, and in Sha'ban then you see how much you paid and how much your zakah, you can subtract or give more. So this is permissible, but with the intention that when you're giving this, you're giving zakah. This is your intention. And for the child and the insane and so on, this is for the wali or the guardian. Then they would give the money as also with the intention of the zakah. If someone, and this is also part of the questions, I was trying to get some points to remember. If someone, the time for the zakah came and it's going to take him a while till the money reaches the one that would benefit from the zakah. If he isolate the money, isolated doesn't have to be physically isolated, but he would make sure that now this amount of money is zakah. So as if he has cash money, for example, he isolated and he has the intention that this is zakah. This is sufficient till he gets the ability to give it away. So whatever means he can do to make sure that this money does not belong to him whatsoever, even though he has the possession of it, but it does not belong to him. And that's why if someone died and he did not pay the zakah, the money is to be taken out of his wealth before anything else, because it was already time for the zakah and he didn't pay. And that's why you have to make a wasiyah or something to make sure that the money is not lost. Of course, taxes are not zakah, right? So if your tax is completely different, right? So that is not to be considered part of the zakah. If someone gives the zakah to someone, does he have to inform him that this is zakah money? No, he shouldn't, so that he does not hurt his feeling that he's giving him charity. If he deserves to be given the zakah, then give him the zakah without telling him. Only if a person is not sure the person deserves it or not, and he wants to ask him, that's fine, but the norm is, as the ulama, they say never to ask, but rather to give them. And that's why those who would, with all due respect, maybe there's a need from somehow, but videotaping their charity and giving it to the poor and taking pictures with the poor that they give, you're humiliating them. Don't expose them. Nobody whatsoever on the face of, even if they on the face of earth would like this, even if they like and they show that they're happy because they're desperate, but anyone would never like for people to expose them like this. They're getting the dirt of the people, the charity of the people. If they deserve it, give it to them. Advertise for yourself or your organization in a different way. It doesn't have to be by exposing the poor and please give us. This is something that it's written in the books of fiqh. Do not humiliate the poor. Honor the poor. So this is, you don't tell them that this is zakah money. As we said, it's permissible to give the zakah early. 1 year early even, some said 2 years. And you calculate that and to make sure that you give it appropriately at the end of the year. There's an issue if someone's money get lost after the time of the zakah was obligatory upon him. He was supposed to give the zakah in the beginning of Ramadan, and he didn't. He waited, and then the money got lost, and now it's the 2nd of Ramadan and he doesn't have money. Does he have to give the zakah? The answer is yes. He doesn't have money. Whenever he gets money, inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provide for him, it's like a loan on him. Because the time came when he was supposed to give the zakah, but he didn't. Whether he's excused or not. But once the time comes, and that shows the importance of the cut-off day. So, because it's haram to delay it unless there's a valid reason, now it's the right of others. It's not your right. Exactly like you have someone's money. You know, someone worked for you for a month, right? And you're supposed to give him his salary at the end of the month, and you lost the money. You're going to say, sorry, brother, I lost the money? No. You have to give him his money. So it becomes a debt on you. So this is with regards to halak al-mal, or the money, if the money is lost. The zakah, as we said, does not get cancelled out. So if a person missed it for years, he has to go back and estimate so that nothing is missed whatsoever. Another thing is, every place, they have the rights for the zakah. The poor in any locality, they have the rights of the zakah before it gets moved elsewhere. So if whatever community, whatever locality, the zakah should be given to them first. If there's no poor, or there's no means for that, then it's permissible to be moved somewhere else. The amount or the price of sending one's zakah, it's for the muzakki to give it. So if there is, if a person sends his money somewhere, he gets a truck to put on it his zakah to the other city. And he has to give money for the truck driver. Does it comes out from the zakah money or from his own pocket? From his own pocket. Zakah is purely to reach the poor. That's why the organizations that they give zakah money or something like this, you give your zakah 1,000, it has to reach the poor 1,000. So this has to be clear to them. And if there's logistics, you pay the logistics. They say your zakah is 1,000, but give us 1,100 because it takes money for the charity to reach. So things like this. It is not permissible to invest the money of zakah. So masjid collecting money of the zakah to give it to the poor and the money staying there. Can they invest the money of the zakah? No, it's not permissible to invest. This is the right of the poor. Give it to the poor. A person has to get rid of it as soon as he gets it with whatever means possible, because it's not one's money. The masarif, just 5 minutes inshallah ta'ala, also there's details who deserves the zakah. The ayah in Surah At-Tawbah is very clear. It's only to the 8 categories that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran. Zakah money is not to be given to whatever need. Zakah. Charity is much more spacious. But zakah, it has to be إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل. These 8 categories only. And the details of that is, of course, for a person to learn. The first 2 are the very famous ones, al-faqir wal-miskin. And both are mentioned and they're not the same one, to make sure that it's clearly stated. Al-faqir wal-miskin, al-faqir is more poor than the miskin. As in Surah Al-Kahf about the masakin, those who had the ship, they were called miskin. They were working. And the story of Al-Khadr, when he broke their ship. وَأَمَّا السَّفِينَةُ فَكَانَتْ لِمَسَاكِينَ يَعْمَلُونَ فِي الْبَحْرِ. They were masakin and they're working. So someone is working and they're miskin, yes. Miskin meaning someone, he's working, he has the means, but whatever earnings is not sufficient to have the necessities to be fulfilled. Necessities. Because another ruling with the zakah is only to fulfill the necessities of the person. The necessities that keeps a person alive. Not luxurious things, not extra things. So, and this can be lots of money in certain localities versus something else. So, for example, the bare minimum of Someone to have a rent, for example, it can be expensive in one place versus the other. So, but it's a necessity to have a roof. And that's why a person can receive the zakah and he has what's equal to the nisab, right? Because of a situation that he faced. But he's faqir at that instant. Someone is living in a house. If he sells the house, he's a rich person. But he's to be told, sell your house. Now he's living in the house, he inherited it, whatever there is, he's living in it. So this is his house, and he faced a situation where it made him poor, or miskeen. He's not able to have the necessities to be covered. That person is to be given zakah. When it comes to al-faqir, they say is much poorer. That means, and they put him in the category someone that has no means whatsoever. Someone is in bed, and he's poor, and he has no means to earn whatsoever. This is the faqir. So that nobody would think that it's only the faqir. No, al-miskin also is to be given the zakah. And the rest. Al-gharimin is one of which to be given, which is the one that has debt, and the time for it came that he has to give it, and he does not have the means. That can be given zakah, as long as the debt is not haram. So if it helps the person, if he took the money as a loan to do something haram, then it's not permissible to give him from the zakah. What if he repented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sincerely? Then it's okay to give him from the zakah. If someone took a loan, and haram loan, that means it has riba, and he's not able to pay anymore, then it's only for the ra's al-mal, or the debt without the riba, without the interest, which is haram to be given from the zakah whatsoever, or charity or anything. If the same thing with someone ibn sabil, the wayfarer, right? If he traveled to commit sins, right, and he needs money to go back, he's not to be given money unless he repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just things like this. Of course, a disbeliever is not to be given from the zakah. He can be given from charity, but not zakah. The relatives. The relatives are, even to be given the zakah more than anyone else, because they're relatives. Unless, and this is the condition, unless spending on them is an obligatory upon you. So if you are already spending on them, and it becomes an obligation upon you, whether it's religiously an obligation, or it become the obligation because of your family and things like this, then it's not permissible to give them from your zakah money. And the point of this is, the zakah, when you give it, you should not benefit from it. So at all conditions, you're already spending on them, giving them $100 a month. This becomes an obligation upon you. If you count that from the zakah, you will benefit. So that's why they say, لِمَنْ تَلْزَمُهُ النَّفَقَةِ. Whoever the nafaqah spending on them is obligatory upon him, he's not to be given zakah. Of course, parents, children, except, and this is a different situation, if a relative, even one son, grown up and he has his work and things like this, or one's parents, there's no such a thing that is giving zakat to your parents, of course. Spending on them is an obligation. أَنْتَ وَمَالُكَ لِأَبِيكَ. You and your wealth is for your father. But the point here is, when it comes to, say for example, your son, your father took a loan. The father is different than the mother. But say for example, someone that you're spending money on, but they took a loan and now it's time for them to pay the loan and they have no means. The loan is separate. So some of the ulama, they say, if they are in need and it's, they're zakah eligible, then you can give them from the zakah. And there's a fatwa by Shaykh ibn Baz rahimahullah and others when it comes to this. Because he says, وَذَلِكَ لِأَنَّ الدِّيُونَ لَا يَلْزَمُ الْقَرِيبَ أَنْ يَقْضِيَهَا عَنْ قَرِيبِهِ. Because the debt is not an obligation upon him that you have to pay the debt. Different than the necessities and things of that nature. But every case, when it comes to these matters, it's very important that a person would ask about their own specific situations, so that we don't mix things up, inshallah ta'ala. Maybe because of the time, we'll stop here, inshallah. I just wanted to mention some of these principles and the importance of it, that we have to give the zakah. Some of the youth, even I was shocked to hear that some of the youth, they have to give zakah and they're not aware of it. Someone has been for example, 18 years old. He's been working for a couple of years and he has money. He does not know that that he has to give zakah because he's living with his parents. They're spending on him and things like this. But he has money, some money saved, so he has to give zakah. So he has to go back and estimate and has to give the zakah because it doesn't get cancelled out over years. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept, inshallah. If you have any questions, please go ahead and hopefully become clear, inshallah. Tfaddal. No, this is where they call it al-mal al-mustafad. The question was, you're having a business and you're billing companies or whatever, and the time for the zakah, say for example, comes in the 1st of Ramadan, and you did not receive the money that you billed these companies, and a big sum of money comes few days before your zakah time, right? You don't have to pay on this money that came, because there's no whole year passed on it. So if your zakah is the 1st of Ramadan and you received $100,000 the 20th of Sha'ban, right? This $100,000, you don't have to pay zakah on it on the 1st of Ramadan. That takes its own year. So the next year to 20th of Sha'ban, you have to pay the zakah on this big sum of money. So you have to watch this big sum of money, see what's going to happen to it if a year passes on it. If you want to be on the safe side, then you give. Meaning, if you're not going to watch where this money goes. If it goes back again to being spent and things like this, there's no zakah on it. But the tijara is different. If it's not money built, it's items that is ready to be sold. So someone has a storage, and the product that he sells is in the storage, and 5 days before the time when he's supposed to give the zakah, bida'a or items came into the storage worth 100,000. He has to give zakah on it. No, it's by the day. Right, right. Right, if it comes 2 months ago, 6 months before the cutoff date of the zakah, then he doesn't have to pay the zakah on that cutoff day. He can wait for its own year. Every time a big sum of money comes in, it has its own hawl, its own year to be considered. Right, they have to be within the minimum of the nisab. No.
So say if you get like you get a sum of money like $10,000 on the 1st of Rajab, for example, and the whole year goes by, and by the end of the year till the next 1st of Rajab, you have say $3,000 left after that. So then you only pay the zakat 2.5% on that $3,000 that you have after.
Yes, if you started the year with 10,000, assuming again the nisab of the fidda will go by the silver, which is very small. So you started with 7,000, and then after the end of the Hijri year, you have only 3,000. So what a whole year passed on is the 3,000, not the 7, because it's already gone. It's whatever the entire Hijri year passed on that amount of money. So it's only the 3,000. So you only pay on 3,000. And I said, is the easiest way is, if it's the time for you to give zakah, on that day, exactly that day, see what you have, and you give 2.5%, you're safe. If it's confusing to figure out how much money came in and out, as long as it's above the nisab.
So if someone was going to wait till like Ramadan, for example, to give his zakat, he has to remember that after that 1 year, he had $3,000, and then when he waits till Ramadan, he remembers that it was $3,000 on that one day, the year passed, and then he gives from $3,000 in Ramadan.
No, he doesn't have to remember anything. Again, if the time when he reached the nisab, doesn't have to be 1st of Ramadan, by the way. So the nisab, he reached it in the beginning of Sha'ban. Then he start counting his Hijri year from the beginning of Shaban. So the next year, the beginning of Shaban, the entire year did not go below the nisab, did not go below the minimum requirement. So at the end of the year, he gives whatever he has on that day. He doesn't have to know anything before. Then he is safe and he's correct. But if it goes below the nisab, then he stopped calculating the year. He does not have to, because now it's below the nisab. So the whole year has to be the nisab and above. And then how much you pay, if it's fluctuating, becomes fluctuating, but it's all over the nisab. Then everything that increases, if a whole year doesn't pass on it, then you don't have to pay on it. So if you maybe we can make an example, someone can help us with this. Get a fake bank account, for example, or a chart. The whole year, money starts with this, it goes down, but it's all above the nisab. Say the nisab is $800. So the entire year, 100,000, 15,000, 7,000, 10,000, like this. And it's all above the nisab. And the nisab started at the beginning of the year, right? And it was 1 million. But then at the end of the year, 3,000. And throughout the year is going like this. But it's never below the 800, which is the nisab. You can then check what every money that entered, a year passes on it or not. Whatever a year passed on something, then you give that something. So you find yourself maybe paying zakah every day, if you want to go by own everything that a year passed on it. And passed on it meaning the million, it did not stay stays as a million. So what stayed after a year? 3,000 only. So that's after the year. The year is not only that 1 year fixed, because after a month there's another year. There's another year, right? So every money comes in, if you look at that chart again after a month, there's another year is there, which is only for that month. So a year passed on this money that came in, and a year passes on this year that, So, but this becomes very difficult if someone has money keeps on coming back and forth. Is it clear or it's not? No. That's it. Right. The day comes of the zakah, you have whatever you have on that day, you divide it by 40, that's the end of it. It's only thing is if someone gets, millions and things like this, then. اتفضل. No. The inventory of the urud al-tijara, the items that are ready to be sold, when he gives the zakah at the end of the year, how does he evaluate it? How much money he gives? Some said the wholesale. Some said what's the opposite of wholesale? Is the retail. If he sells retail, then it's based on the retail. If he sells wholesale, it's based on the wholesale. It's always to figure out the value of it. Because again, the one that comes, say, for example, the classical way, the government sends the guy to collect the zakah. He looks at the inventory and he's an expert. Right? He's not an evil person. And إِيَّاكَ وَكَرَائِمْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. Prophet ﷺ would say to the man, be warned against the best of their wealth. He does not look at, this car part is like worth so much money, and he has only one piece. And then he looks at from the midst of it. He would look at, and he would say, the value of it is this. He knows the prices, and he knows the market, and he knows the value of it. So it would be based on the value. And if it's not clear, sometimes it's easier than to base it on the wholesale, where it's easy. If he sells it with a wholesale price, he sells it right away.
What about the raw materials?
Yes, the raw materials has zakah on it. The raw materials, either that are sold as raw materials, so there's zakah on urud al-tijara, or that are, the raw material, either a person is in the business of selling raw materials to the factories. So he has raw materials in his storage. So there's zakah on it, because he sells it. Now the factories, they receive raw materials, and they have a place where they put the raw materials and they manufacture it. If it goes to the line right away, and there's no raw materials present, there's no zakah on it because nothing is there. But there's always in that factory the entire year, there's always raw materials. If you go any day in the year, they have something there, right? So that means that something, that minimum amount, or not the minimum, at the end of the year, if there's raw materials, then there's zakah on it.
How much do they pay on the raw material?
The same thing for Arud al-Tijar, 2.5%.
But they're not selling the raw material.
That's right. But they're going to use it for another product. So if you go to a factory that has raw material sitting there, and the whole year is there, and you have the final product next to it that was made from the raw material, and you have even the ta'bi'ah, the packaging, all of these things to be given from all of the things that are present, 2.5%. Because it all goes to the final product. You see what I'm saying? And that's why all of these items, if they're all transformed to the final product, and the final product is staying there, this final product is urud tijara. It's ready to be sold. You see what I'm saying? So all the contents of it, it's part of it. So instead of having 100 items that are ready to be sold, it's 50, and then the rest are still the bits and pieces of it. And it has a value to it. And it's going to be something that is ready to be sold. So it's all part of urud al-tijara. Right, that's a good question. For the gold, you have more than one price, the price of buying versus the price of selling. But what is, according to the zakah, is the price of the gold that is in the market. Like I checked today, it was $94 point something per gram. This is not the manufactured gold. This is the raw gold that is sabika, whatever they call it. So 24 carats. So yes, so it doesn't matter what they're selling it with. It's this worldwide known price of the gold of today. That's what. Or anything that is including the nisab. The zakah is based on whatever the nisab and more. So everything that a year passes on it, even if you paid zakah on, say there was 100,000, and then at the end of the year it's 120. So you paid on the 100,000 zakah. And the same 100,000 stays for the next year, and it became 200,000. You pay on it again. So you don't only pay on the extra over the nisab, you pay on the nisab and the extra, and what's more than the nisab. Except the zakah of the shares that a person has in a company that he's not buying and selling. Or a person gave someone some money to invest it, not for buying and selling. Someone is, they are partners in a truck, right? So they both share the price of the truck. And whatever the profit comes, the truck, there's no zakah on it. But the profit that he gets, then if he keeps it, there's zakah. If he spends it, there's no zakah on it. Anything else on that? Naam, mashallah. If someone converted to Islam, reverted to Islam, there's no zakah on them from the previous years, of course. So if they reverted to Islam today, for example, what's today's date? The 23rd of Sha'ban, and they, mashallah, have money over the nisab today. So they have $800. And then after a year from now, if that did not go below the $800, for example, then they give the zakah. So the zakah for someone that reverted to Islam, if they have enough money and over the nisab the entire year, that coming year, then at the end of it they give the zakah. Right. The issue if there's partners in a business account versus a personal account. If the business account that there's partners, if they're able to separate their money or their proportion of money, then each one to give their own zakah, separate. But if the money is all for the business, and the business, there are things to be sold and things like this. These items, for example, that are to be sold, then there's zakah on it. If it's given, then it's sufficient for both of them. Or if the company gives the zakah for the entire money, then it's sufficient for them. If it's now. Oh, there's one. Okay. Mashallah. I was looking at your account, mashallah. There's questions here. Someone took student loan. He is in debt. He is working to meeting his family expenses, but does not earn enough to pay the debt. Is he eligible to receive zakah? If this is a good question when it comes to the loans. First of all, riba is not to be paid whatsoever at all levels, at all means. If it's interest, you don't pay the interest whatsoever. The second thing is, if the debt is already been deferred, then a person is paying it on a monthly basis and is able to pay the loan every month like this, and he's working, then he's not to be given the zakat to pay off the loan. If the time of the monthly payment comes and he's not able to pay it, right, and that's going to get him into some trouble, then is to be given zakah for whatever he's not able to, but subtracting the riba if there is riba or interest. So it has to be assessed whether a person is not able to or not, but if he's able and it's payment, then he's not to be given zakah, to pay it off altogether. Now, if my relatives in need live far away, is the priority to the people in my area or my relatives? And this is another, mashallah, is good. As we said, the relatives are more, have more rights to be given zakah. And they come before the physical presence of people in one's area. So the relatives comes before your locality. So if you have a relative lives far away, and it's a relative, and they're poor, then they have more rights than those who live in the same area that are not relatives. Is there any tools that tracks one's wealth and a hijri later remind them to pay zakah on the wealth that earned that day? Maybe someone needs to create something, mashallah. But then how are you going to feed it? I guess it gets the information from where? I don't know any of that, Allah. Does Masjid Al-Haqq accept zakah? No, we don't take zakah money. The masjid here, we don't collect zakah money. Where can I pay my zakah here? Wallahi, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy. We have, ask around, inshallah ta'ala, he will find, inshallah. If someone receives money from tax returns, have to pay zakah on it. Someone receives money from tax returns, then yes, of course, it has to be given zakah with all of the conditions mentioned before. If it's a big amount of money, he can wait for it to pass a year, or in the day where he's supposed to give zakah, then he gives zakah on everything that is present in his account. At what point does one cross the nisab? The nisab, as we said, of the gold is 85, the nisab of fidda is 595. And the money, if we said that we're going to make it based on the fidda, on the silver, which is 595, I think, and I might be wrong, if someone check it now, maybe that can make it also easier. It's 595 grams of silver. How much is 595 grams of silver today?
This website, IslamicBelief.org.uk, says that the current nisab value says 612 grams to 506 British pounds, actually. So I don't know how much 506 British pounds is in American dollars. But
Or the price of silver, what's 595 silver today? $625. So everybody has to pay zakah, mashallah.